Okay, one more thing to take care of before you take the car off the lift is these calipers. You can see they're really rusty. We're going to be using some rust remover on here that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to have to probably take the calipers off, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have to completely take them off the vehicle to put some paint on it or not. Also, the vents within the rotors also have rust in them, rust in the holes and that kind of thing. So I'll be pulling the rotors off and doing around the hub area and also around the vented area, because what's happening here is that as the rotors rust away, it's slinging rust all over this wheel. I don't know if you can tell, but it's black, but it is kind of has a red tint, especially on the inside here, because of all the rust that's going on, and that's just not acceptable for me. So I'm going to, nothing else, just take and freshen it up, and we'll check the pads and check the wheel bearings and that kind of thing, although I suspect it's a sealed bearing, so there's really not much to do up there. This is a rack and pinion, so it's just going to be inner and outer tie rods and then ball joints. So I'm going to be taking all the rust off of this. But I thought a lot about this. I've had front wheel drive cars that have been about this size, and I've had some rear wheel drive cars and that kind of thing, and I've never really seen this kind of corrosion. In fact, I was a little concerned, and I did some searching on the internet, and I found a post from 2007 with somebody who bought a Pontiac Solstice in 6 months. The rotors and the calipers looked like that. And I have experience with zinc plating. I plated nickel, I plated gold, I plated zinc before on the bolts and that kind of thing. And I can tell you that electrolysis is a real thing. So what I really wanted to do is I wanted to find out what the potential is with the ground in the car. So if this is kind of floating, it's really not good, but if it's kind of resistive to the car, then what you're going to do is you're going to create an electrical energy, and it's going to have a different potential than the vehicle. So this whole thing is going to be then isolated. My option was to buy new rotors, new calipers, and that kind of thing. And so these come zinc plated from the factory or the rebuilder or wherever you get them. And I thought, if I put zinc plated stuff on here again, it's just going to do the same thing. And I'm not really into doing that, especially knowing that somebody had problems after 6 months of ownership of a vehicle. They took it back to the dealer. The dealer said, "Sorry, ma'am, there's not really much we can do about your rusting hubs." But you see in the rear, the zinc plating is fine on the rear. Everything looks really good. The brake rotors look good. They're not all rusty. And it just in the front. So in thinking about how this works here, this is a rear-wheel drive car. The ball joints are electrically isolated from the control arms. The control arms are electrically isolated from the chassis through the rubber control arm bushings that are rubber. So I decided to do an experiment and actually find out what is the difference in potential between this and that. So let's do that. So I'm going to put one on the wheel or the brake rotor or whatever, should be the same. And then one on the frame. Okay, and I held that for you so you can see. .48 ohms. I was thinking, could that be right? Could it be really 4.48 ohms? So I was really kind of concerned about maybe it was grounded somewhere, but let's pull it apart and see if we can find out why it would be slightly resistive. You don't really expect that. You would kind of expect it to be either in the meg ohms or in the really low ohms if it's grounded, but 4.5 K. Ooh, man, that was high one. Probably from all that rust. That's definitely an eyesore. So we're going to be cleaning that up. Take this. Looks like somebody left the Torx, the countersunk Torx, out of this hub. It centers it, so I'll have to get. I think that's a 6x1 millimeter T25 Torx head. All right, held that measurement. There we are, 5.27 k ohm. So I think the thing to do now is to, we're going to take this apart, but I think what we're going to be doing, so this doesn't happen to me again, because I'm going to refinish all this, make this look really well, refinish the wheel, and get this rust to stop slinging all over the place. And I think the thing to do, the best thing to do is to ground this, ground the hub itself. And that'll ground everything around here, with the exception of the control arms, and that's okay because they look fine and they're aluminum anyway. But and they're not corroding. One thing interesting to note here is that this hub is actually splined for a CD axle. So this hub was actually probably taken from a different vehicle, and they left the splines in that. But I'll tell you what, if there was a CD axle connected from here to a transaxle or a differential, we wouldn't be having this rust problem right now because of the ground. And so that's another question. You can go to the rear and take a measurement and see what the hub and the frame potential differences. We should do Ooh, rust. Yeah, you gotta love that. So, here. All right, one thing I'm going to use here is I'm going to use silicone plugs and caps for these things to, when you take the banjo bolt off the caliper, you want to plug that. One thing is, put some kind of a drip tray or something like that underneath here, because anything that this touches, the floor, anything, it's going to get, brake fluid's very corrosive, and it lifts paint really easy, especially old brake fluid like this is. So take that off, get a tray underneath it as soon as possible. Then just put this silicone plug in here, like that. Kind of twist it a little bit. Yeah. I can do whatever you want, no brake bleeding, nothing like that. Come back, wipe up any mess you've got, anything at all. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take and estimate the amount of wire. So kind of just unspool it, figure out kind of how much you need. And there's a really good grounding spot right here. Nothing wrong with that right there. It's about 1/4 inch. I can put a 1/4-20 stainless bolt in it and crimp an eyelet to this, and then that'll ground this spindle and this whole hub assembly. See, that's kind of hard to press with your thumb. It's in fact, it's almost impossible. You have to get, it's best just to get a screwdriver behind it and press that tab down. Hey, here's a note about brake pads. First of all, always get ceramic brake pads. Those are going to deliver the least amount of crap on your wheel, I guess is what it is. Those semi-metallic pads, or the organic pads are even worse. And you know, they make all this black dust all over your wheel. Nowadays, today's cars are mostly set up with ceramic brakes. I have had quite a few different cars with squeaking brakes, and I tell you how to solve that problem. So what you have here is you have your typical ceramic brake pad, and if you can see here, it has a little chamfer ground in it, not much of one, and in fact this is clearly not enough, but it has there's a flat surface and then a little grind that goes downwards. What that's going to do when your brake rotor's running along the surface of this, it's going to help break some of that and allow it to stop it from chattering. But you can see this one, it has absolutely no chamfer whatsoever. So if these things squeak, which I would imagine they would, we'll put a little chamfer, maybe a 30 degree or something like that in the end, and maybe halfway down the pad, and that'll solve most kinds of brake squeaking you have, and that'll solve any kind of brake squeaking you have. Mostly. There we go. So at 100 pounds air pressure, I can take off most all the rust here. You don't want any paint on the surface at all. You don't want to wipe it off. You don't want to do anything crazy like that. Make sure to just leave a little bit of an edge here. I'm gonna paint the rotor face, and now I'll just flip it upside down, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Got our ground wire run, and it runs that bolt there that we put, that stainless steel bolt we put there, and goes in there. And I have another piece of convoluted tubing, and it goes around to a chassis ground. So now let's measure this thing. If you remember before, it was 5K ohm, somewhere in that neighborhood. So see what she says. There you go. See, it reads 0 ohms. So so the hub itself is grounded now. Now the hot water. Looks good. You saw I went boom, 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 boom. I'm not going to tell you what the spec is because everybody's going to argue with me. So I torqued with the 80. It's probably too much. Good to go. Let's see what we have done here. Oh, that looks pretty good, and you know that'll last many, many miles, and stop that rust and corrosion. That's no good. And wow, in fact, the whole front end looks pretty good. And what? Hey, what do you?
Hurry up! I need to get out of here.
Ugh. All right. Well, we're almost done.